Writing my 10 books on guitar, I discovered every instrument has a story. I'd like to share these stories with you. My personal guitar story began in 1960 in Liverpool with my first hearing of a Fender Stratocaster. Bruce Welch of The Shadows takes up the story.
Jet Harris, Hank and I knew from the actual Two Eyes Coffee Bar, the cellar, having played with him a few times, just jamming with him. And he was hired to play bass by the Most Brothers on this same tour that we were on, the first tour. So we had Cliff and the Drifters and Eddie Calvert, the trumpet player. Top of the bill were two lovely guys called the Kalin Twins from America. And they had a fantastic record called When. I'm not going to sing it, but when you smile at me. So obviously, during the 3-week tour, we would watch everybody else's act, until you're on. And the Drifters, so Cliff kept saying, he said, what a great player this guy is. He's a really good player. You could tell the difference, And so by the end of the tour came, to make it short, Cliff wanted Jet in the band. And he had realised, I guess, that there were at the time, better players around than he had. And I'm not being derogatory, hopefully. They were his mates. They were the original Drifters. But when they were dealing with pros, I guess, they saw the difference. And there is a difference, obviously. So Jet came into the band, and we had gone to Abbey Road for the first time. Starting in the tour in October, we recorded in Abbey Road in November of '58. We recorded a thing called Living, Love and Doll. And it was a small hit anyway. But Cliff he kept saying to Norrie Paramore, our producer, or Cliff's producer, who was like, we were so young, he was like our dad, everybody's dad, it's like your father. But he was all powerful, Norrie Paramore, he was the producer. And it was Cliff Richard who was signed to EMI, not the Drifters. And he kept saying, Norrie, come and listen to my band, the new band is great. Anyway, he kept badgering Norrie, and Norrie eventually signed the Drifters to a recording contract. We made a single called Feeling Fine, the first single. I think it came out in January '59, so a really short time, from October '58 to January, suddenly we had our own recording contract. And again, long and short of it, we tried to release this record, or EMI tried to release it in America. And we hadn't realised there was a huge black vocal group called the Drifters, the famous Drifters. So they, through their lawyers, and they said, you can't release a record called the Drifters in America. So we had to come up with a new name, basically. And Hank and Jet, by then we'd made an absolute fortune. We had scooters each. So they toddled off to Ruislip Lido, to a pub, and went through lots of names, what about this, what about that? The Four Jets, the so-and-so and so-and-so. And then Jet said, when we're back in Cliff, he said, because everything was so limited then, if you go to a concert now, you're used to the lights, the sound, the speakers, this. In those days, there'd be one spotlight on Cliff. Like, that was it. And maybe two mics if you were lucky. Usually one mic. So Cliff would be singing at the mic. If Hank and I wanted to sing with him, we had to walk and sing with the, around. And Jet kept saying, this one spotlight, he said, we're in the shadows behind Cliff. And Hank said, oh, that's a great name. That makes sense, and came back and said, what about the shadows? And we thought, yeah, great name. And that was it.
Great name and great guitars. But the guitars also needed a setup. And in 1960, there were no guitar techs and no guitar tools. Even finding a Phillips screwdriver and an Allen wrench was a problem. There were no electronic tuners, so tuning a guitar was done to a piano or a tuning fork, if you could find one. The Shadows soon gave up on their Fenders and switched to Burns guitars. Thankfully, things have moved on, and these days you can find all the tools you need and lots of helpful expert advice. Every guitar can be made to play and sound better with a little TLC. I want to help, so if you have any specific challenges with your guitar, drop me an email and I will help. Bruce has many more fascinating stories coming soon in Guitar Story. Check out my new digital manuals with all the setup help you need, now with free professional video supplements.